Hello, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural IPS Take Live. Today, I'm joined, as always, by James Henderson. James, why don't you tell everybody what we're talking about?
Yeah, look, first one of these, so bear with us as we work our way through it, Jake and myself. But we're going to be talking to Ven-Allen Lubin today, NC State's latest commitment out of the transfer portal. We're going to give you some thoughts on him, how he may fit the roster, take some questions out of the chat. We will have this posted up on the website as well, likely tomorrow. And as always, we say this when we tape here at YouTube. Make sure you subscribe on our YouTube channel to get notifications and different things moving forward. And so, Jake, let's jump right into it. Ven-Allen Lubin, I know we did a Zoom call on him earlier this week. You were not able to join. You were at work. So I'm going to go to you first. Your thoughts on NC State landing Ven-Allen Lubin in terms of what they might be getting as a player?
It's funny, after all the talk we've done around the possible options with a five-man, that it's boiled down to somebody who fits the mold of a lot of the guys that we've talked about. So I love that he's ultra athletic, can finish really well around the rim. He's somebody that's going to just feed off of the space that's created by the other parts of the offense. So for me personally, I love that. I think it's a situation where he's going to be able to thrive. They're not going to ask too much of him. I was, curious about some of Will Wade's comments in the release about him being more of a perimeter threat potentially at NC State. So I think there's some interesting stuff. But I wasn't on the live or the Zoom we did. So what are your thoughts, James?
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I said on there, I believe he is, going into all of this, I thought Allen Breed was State's most underrated player simply because, we've been kind of folks have just dismissed him in a sense in terms of what he might add based on what he'd done in just a couple of games at McNeese. Now I'm wondering if that player is Ven-Allen Lubin because when you look at his numbers and you see it every time he's quoted in terms of his commitment, whether it's ESPN or Field of 68 or even us, when you put his stats, you're using the stats from North Carolina. And you see State added a guy who averaged 8.7 points, 5.5 rebounds. That doesn't really blow you away, right? But when you look at the fact that he did that in 19 and a half minutes and he did it at an extremely efficient clip. I mean, based on a PER standpoint, he was North Carolina's best player last year from a player efficiency rating standpoint. And you look at his numbers at Vanderbilt when he had a full time role, averaged 28 minutes a night, 12.6 rebounds. I mean, if he comes to NC State and gives you 12.67 rebounds, I think that's going to be big because I don't think a lot of people are expecting that by just simply looking what he did at North Carolina last year.
No, I think the usage is going to be a little different as well. Like, I think there's going to be a chance where he does maybe have a little more dynamic elements to his game. I'm not going to go as far as say he's going to be a shooter, but I just think you're going
Yeah.
to have the lineup around him that's going to allow him to do a lot of stuff. Like, you think about it, if you have a Holloman at a guard, Arsenault, Breed, and then you have Darrion Williams at the four, like, that's going to put a lot of perimeter spacing on a defense. And when you have a guy like Lubin setting the screen and rolling to the rim hard and as athletic as he is, like, he could just be someone that cleans up on some easy points. And I know we've had that discussion on like a Paul Embaya as well, but it's just the same mold. Or even the Scott from Louisville when we started talking about him. Um, you know, he can really flourish if he doesn't expand at all. And it just ties into everything NC State's done in the portal so far. It's like they're getting guys who can make things happen, and have identifiable skill sets that are good. Like, you know what to expect from them, but they also have parts of their game where they can take a step. So it's, to me, just the question becomes like, NC State's ceiling is going to be defined by how many of these guys take that next step. And Lubin's just, adding to the list of one of many that you could see something from that they haven't already shown so far.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the upside is there that we may not be seeing, right? I mean, because we've talked about it. Like if he pairing him with the a Darrion Williams, you have the opportunity to have two seasoned, experienced front court players, two guys who can come in here and really, I think, stabilize things for NC State. And that's where you get into the discussion of Paul Embaya, what he would potentially add. And we'll talk about Paul here in a second as well, because I know folks are going to wonder, how do we see this five position playing out? But I think with Lubin, a couple of things really stand out to me. Looking at his numbers on Bart Torvik, Jake, You compare him to Jalen Washington, for instance, who ended up at Vanderbilt, started the season at North Carolina as their starter at the center position. He was a better offensive rebounder, was a better defensive rebounder, slightly lower block percentage, but you're comparing him to a guy 6'11". He still was in the same range. I think Washington was at 5.6. He was at 5.0. Much more efficient offensively, shot a better field goal percentage, took care of the ball better. I mean, he was a totally, on almost every metric, he was a better player than Jalen Washington. And I think for State to be able to get a guy like that at this point in the process, even with Embaya in the fold, pretty big get. It really is, because he's a total floor raiser. Like, from day one, okay, well, this guy can play in the ACC.
Yep. And play well. Like he's someone that you don't have to have questions about him. And I think that's just such a, security blanket from this recruiting world where you're filling so many pieces year in and year out, that it's valuable to have a guy that you just absolutely know without a doubt what to expect from him.
Yeah, I'm interested when you look at the element. I know we're going to do a film room here soon on both Darrion Williams and Ven-Allen Lubin, but when you look at pairing those two together, how do you feel their games may mesh?
Well, I think when you add a piece like Williams that can do a variety of things on offense, right? Like, he can fill many different roles, flex up and down the lineup, all stuff that we've said about Darrion Williams so far. But that's just going to provide more space for Ven-Allen Lubin to operate. So if you're going to use him as just like a rim running five, then you're going to need someone that draws their man out of the paint, and you can't just let people stack things up, right? So it provides a little bit of insurance against some of his best skill sets of getting taken away, like if they start clogging the paint up and not allowing that roll to get there, or hitting a short roll. And I think also having a guy like Williams, he finds guys that cut to the rim hard. Like if he catches the ball and draws help, he's a good passer. We've talked about his assist rate throughout this since he committed, at least. And to me, a guy like Lubin or whoever's running the five, especially if they can finish, is going to really benefit from that. Like they're going to get a lot of opportunities just because Darrion Williams creates so many good things.
Yeah, we'll take a question here out of the chat, and I think this one's joking a little bit, but it opens up a discussion point for us. CM Ball 1, how bad will it be when he has to guard someone that's 6'8.5"? Okay. Right. And I think it's a talking point on the forums, right? The fact that he's 6'8", and it feels like we're suggesting NC State's going to play him at the 5. Well, I don't think there's any suggesting. Like, he's going to be a 5 at NC State. And if it makes folks feel better, Jake, you can say he started 2 4s, right? Maybe you feel better. I know NC State did that with Richard Howell a few years back. Played him as a 5 and whatever you wanted. They just had 2 forwards listed at their front court positions. But I don't think NC State worries about that. And I know there's this thought you need size and rim protection, and that's not to say you don't. That stuff's great. But you can build your defense in ways to overcome it if you don't have that. And I already mentioned, even at his size, he had a 5% block rate, which was top 10 in the ACC last year. So even at 6'8", he was still one of the better rim protectors in the league last season. So I'm not worried about when they play bigger players. I think one thing, and you know this from watching NBA to college level, it feels like where teams are going now, you have to be able to play. Like even at the 5 position, you have to be able to function offensively or defensively. But and when I say defensively, defend ball screens, move your feet, guard one-on-one, do different things in space. And then offensively, you have to be able to play with the ball in your hands and be comfortable. And I think the way NC State views it, Ven-Allen Lubin is a guy who it can just play. Like you play him with 4 other players and you build your defensive scheme around it and you go with it from there. But he's not a guy who's going to hurt you on the other end. And you're simply saying, well, he's 7 foot, so we've got him on the court, right? Like that's the only thing that, I know one of the posters mentioned on our forums going back to, I don't know what year it was, all the years run together, 21 when Manny Bates was injured. And it was James, you were telling us, that year we were not good because we lost Manny. What happens now with no size? I'm like, no, you had size at that point.
Mm-hmm.
E.B. Dewano was big. Ernest Ross was 6'10". Jalen Gibson was 6'11". They just couldn't play. No offense to those guys,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't mean that offense, but they were not ready to play. You're talking 3 young guys who were big and not, and honestly, like, I know you agree with this. Paul Embaya is infinitely a better prospect than those 3 guys I just named to you.
Yeah.
But those 3 guys were not ready for the ACC. And when you start throwing around the term raw, when you talk about prospects, it opens up the door for them to not be ready to the level they need to be to help you win the league. And you can't make that case for Ven-Allen Lubin. He's already done it.
Yeah. Like I said, the question marks aren't there. You know what to expect from him. You've seen it. And answer, I mean, like, I just don't see people with the height concerns. Like, one, the length is there, so it's not a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then 2, like, how many bigs last year would you really be concerned about that State played? It's an interesting exercise to go back and be like, okay, who would we be really concerned about based off of last year's schedule? Maybe like Eddie Lampkin from Syracuse, but he'd have to guard Lubin as well on defense, which could be a problem. Efton Reed from Wake, maybe the big guy, but then you throw in like the big guy from Duke. Like, are you really worried about that? Like them throwing the ball down the post to him? Like, no. I mean, there's not many. There's just not many bigs that they're operating that way. And then if you want to say Clemson, cool, I'll give you that. Clemson threw the ball down to the post, but look what happened when they played McNeese State in the NCAA tournament, right? Like McNeese State had a less athletic 6'8" guy in the middle of that zone that they just threw together, and I mean, Clemson didn't know how to respond.
I want to use this. I want to go back to a statement that Kevin Keats made early in his tenure, and I hope everybody's okay with that. We're going to talk about a statement Coach Keats made back early in his tenure, right? But he was actually talking about the 4 position, Jake, because if you remember early on with Coach Keats, he was playing Torrin Doran, who was about 6'5" at the 4, kind of the 4 guard spot. And it was a similar question. How can you play a guard at the 4, right? Like, folks kind of panicked and wondered, what are you going to do when they have a big traditional 4-man? And I thought it always stuck with me when what Coach Keats said. He said, more often than not, those guys can't play. But he also said, if teams want to throw the ball into them, we're fine with that. Right? Like, if you want to throw the ball into players who you don't even want for producing offense, but you want to try and take advantage of a mismatch, we'll live with that because we know it's not functionally how you want to operate. And that's kind of to your point. Almost every team you play now plays a spaced out pick and roll ball screen offense. You're not worrying about your 5 having to anchor down. What you're worried about your 5 having to do is defend in space, switch and defend, play and drop coverage, hedge, blitz, different things you have to do on the ball, where theoretically it's probably better to have a guy who's a little smaller, but a little more athletic and twitchier.
Yeah, I really agree 100%. And I'm interested. So I was just pulling up the stats while you were talking. He took 3 threes at UNC last year, didn't make any of them.
Mm-hmm.
When you go back to his year at Vanderbilt, shot 40 threes, made 13, so about 32.5%. Like, if he can be a center that takes 1 3 a game, like, that also adds something to the offense. Like, that changes the way teams have to guard you fundamentally. And not to mention, Jerry Ding's probably going to get some minutes at the 5 this year. You're talking about putting offensive lineups out there that are truly dynamic, that have just a lot of different options that can be pinpointed at various times. So I think it gives Wade a lot of levers to pull. Like, there's just going to be a lot of different options that he has on the offensive end and truly on defense as well to address issues as they arise in a game. And I think that's valuable. It's something that NC State has probably struggled with at times when they're so locked in, not excluding last year when you're just locked into your rotation and you have your 3rd big that comes in and you're, if a big gets in foul trouble, then that big's going to have a huge game. I don't know that that's the case next year. Like, I don't know if Lubin picks up 2 fouls. I'm not sure that we know how NC State addresses that. And, I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think you like you said, you've got options. I'm interested to see how far along Mikey Wilkins ends up being, because I would imagine Mikey projects as a 5 in this system, at least early on. And so can he give you 5 to 10 minutes, right? I mean, we've already talked a little bit about Jerry Dean playing some there. He's going to play a few minutes there as well. But we're going to, and again, it sounds like we're talking about Embaya. We're going to get to that in a second. But I did want to throw out one of the comments from the chat. Do we feel Lubin is an upgrade over James Scott? This is from Train Lover for you, Jake. What do you think? Do you feel like he's an honest, give your honest opinion on it?
Probably not. I think Scott, I'll preface all this by saying if Lubin makes some steps, or if he does add the shooting component back into his game, then it becomes a lot narrower and it becomes a more interesting conversation to have. But I think Scott, with just his superior size, a little bit better rim protection, probably gives him the edge. But for NC State's scheme and how they're putting it together, I don't really know. And I also don't know from a price point perspective, like how much does being better really matter if what you're looking for out of your five is just, rim running and defense. Like, I don't know if it's worth an investment that it might have taken to get Scott versus what you paid to get Lubin, which still might have been an investment, but it was kind of your last piece, right? So it doesn't matter as much. But on the Wilkins front, I think he's someone that could just be undervalued by a mile. Or around, just from a consensus standpoint, because he can rebound the ball. I feel pretty confident in that. Like, he did it well in high school. He's got some versatility to his game, a little bit of athleticism. Like, you can rely on that if you have to. Like, and you talk about guys not being ready, and I think the big difference is going to be, it's not going to be like a Ibi Dewana who's thrust into a role after Manny Bates gets injured, where like you're having to play him 25, 30 minutes a night at times. Like, that's not going to be what you're asking of Mikey Wilkins. And I think it's so much easier to adapt to, like, go in there as a freshman, maybe a 10-minute stretch if someone's in foul trouble, or if you need minutes, or if you're just buying time for a TV timeout, like, just bust your ass for a few minutes and make it happen. I think that's something that you can ask of a kid like that.
Yeah, for me, first on the James Scott front, I think it's kind of it's like, what's your favorite ice cream flavor, right? Like, because it's what are you looking for? And that's where it gets interesting in this debate, because I think the takeaway should be, I don't feel like NC State has a certain five they want every single year. There's not a certain archetype they're looking for. They're going to take whatever they can get and try and make it work. And the reason I bring that up with Scott versus Ven-Allen Lubin, I think Scott probably projects better as a defensive player, right? Really good in space for his size, long, all those different things, just gives you more size. But then you look at the offensive end, it was like a 40% free throw shooter. He had no range at all. Right, whereas Ven-Allen Lubin shot a good. What did he shoot from the free throw line? 71% this year at the free throw line. Shot 68% from the field. You mentioned it earlier, 33% from three in limited opportunities at Vanderbilt. Like, totally different offensive player in terms of how he can impact for you. So it becomes which is, like, I'm not saying you're wrong, right? I think, the upside is there with Scott, especially when you factor in an extra year of eligibility. But I think you made a great point pointing out when he decided you didn't have Darrion Williams yet.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have PJ Haggerty yet. So you're not really sure how much funds you could commit to a guy until you have that 1A guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that impacted NC State's pursuit of James Scott. I had one guy tell me jokingly about the James Scott recruitment, and this was not I don't need to say who it was or wasn't, but it was something along the lines of, I don't know if I were a school, I would be paying 7 figures for a guy who's going to get you 6 and 5. And I can't really argue that, because I think you could see James Scott averaged 6 and 5 this year at Louisville, I think averaging 24 minutes a night. And compare it to what we said about Ven-Allen Lubin in 19 minutes, right? Like, so from a production standpoint, you may have gotten a better player, but I don't know if upside-wise, impact-wise, you may have gotten a better player. I think it's two different guys.
Yeah, I agree with that. I saw an interesting comment in the chat someone made. The last coach got run out of Raleigh for playing short players at the 4. Wade won't make that mistake. And I find that funny, because Darrion Williams is 6'5", 6'5 and a half, 6'6 with shoes on. You know what I mean? And that's exactly who Kevin Keats was playing. Like, that's Dontrez Styles, but it's just a much better version of Dontrez Styles. And, matter of fact, like, if you take this roster as it's constructed now and you put Dontrez Styles on it, I still think Like, if you swap him for Reed or for Williams, like that's a okay team. That's still fine. And you probably get better results with Wade coaching that from an analytics standpoint than what you were trying to accomplish last year. So it's not just a personnel argument. And I think that's what people get tied up in is like, well, like this guy versus that guy and so on and so forth. But it's how you're using them. And it's like, and I really don't want to mention Marcus Hill's name on the inaugural
There you go.
live IPS take.
Let's do it.
But it just goes and drills into usage. Like if you're going to bring in a guy who has a skill set, if you're not game planning to really capitalize on what that skill set is, then what the hell did you bring him in for? Like why are you using him like this? So I just don't think that's going to be an issue with Wade. And that's why when he makes comments like, hey, Ven-Allen Lubin was a good shooter, before, and he has some perimeter skills, I put more stock into that because I think he's going to try to scheme up ways to squeeze some juice out of that and to make him hard to guard. Maybe it only is one look a game. Maybe it's, he shoots 30%, but if you're shooting 30% on one look a game, like that's on the scouting report now. Like teams have to account for that. They can't just sag off. Like they can't leave you on a pick and pop. It's little things that over the course of an aggregate long season adds up to a whole lot for the program.
Yeah, and I wanted to go back to Mikey Wilkins. I saw someone comment in here on, it was CM Ball 1. Thought I read where Mikey's high school or AAU coach mentioned how he's comfortable at any spot on the court similar to Burns. Hopefully that translates if Embaya doesn't end up here. Yeah, we're going to get to Paul Embaya in a second, but I think the thing that I like about Mikey Wilkins, Jake, is that I feel at the 5 position, offense translates. Right? Like if you have a knack already coming out of high school for scoring the basketball, it typically translates to the next level in terms of being able to score. Not to say you're going to be a high level scorer, but you can produce offense, right? Because you're just skilled. Mikey Wilkins is a skilled basketball player. I mean, so when you talk about overlooking his upside, I 100% agree because NC State may not be envisioning a role for him this year. But it could be you get into workouts and you start seeing that this guy can score on Ven-Allen Lubin. This guy can score on, if you have him, Paul Embaya or Jerry Ding or whoever he can just score the basketball. Then, yeah, he can earn himself the types of minutes we're talking about here. So I think Mikey Wilkins is going to be a fascinating follow this year for State because when you look at his profile and you see right now him maybe not playing, I wouldn't be surprised if he earns some minutes. Basically just, you get into January and you get an interview with Will Wade. He says, the dude's just scoring on us in practice.
Yeah. Gotta give him a look.
We're going to play him.
I agree. And I think it's exciting too. You're going to see him around Darrion Williams for a full year, right? Like some of that stuff rubs off. Like it's funny, like even in like a world where you work in an office job, if you sit around someone long enough, you start picking up on little mannerisms, things they do that you think work well. And like that happens on the basketball court too. Like practicing against dudes where you're seeing them do the same stuff over and over again. It's like, okay, that rubs off. And Darrion Williams is good enough to have that effect on some of these younger guys, whether it's a Langdon or a Wilkins or somebody that can pick up on some of that and endure through the program.
Ryan in the chat says D5 and Val could be top 2 ACC front court duo. What do you think? I haven't looked at the league. I'm going off the top of my head. I'm sure Duke's going to have something.
Yeah.
Louisville? What's Louisville? Do you know
Louisville's got some pieces. I mean, they got a couple of internationals coming in. I mean, they have some guys. So I don't know. I think for me, they might because Darrion Williams is that good.
Right.
I mean, like for me, that makes it a lot easier of an argument. And if you have a competent 5, then you are automatically in the probably top 25%, right? Because you're just so stacked on that one position. But yeah, I mean, like the potential is there. If you're going on upside, then yeah, like State's definitely up there.
Let's talk about the 5 position with Ven-Allen Lubin and Paul Embaya. Paul's currently signed with NC State, obviously. Well, I signed an agreement with NC State to the point where he's expected to be in Raleigh. So we're going to operate with that assumption right now. I know for me, I think Lubin's floor is probably the way to start the season if they're both on the roster. And then you just kind of see if can Embaya just be too good to keep off the court. I don't know where you're at on him in terms of starting. I know it's still early, but just kind of projecting it out. I
Yeah.
mean, like, are you paying? Are you paying what you likely compensated Ven-Allen Lubin to back up Paul Embaya? I don't think so.
No, I mean, I think the inside track would certainly go to Lubin at this point. But it's a classic example of you never know what's going to happen 5 games in, right? Like, if I had to put smart money on something, it's Ven-Allen Lubin starting game 1. And if Mbaya's here and we get to game 5 and he's just too good to keep off the court, then you play him. You know what I mean? Like, you can't not, and I don't think Wade's the type of coach that's just going to be entrenched in something. He's going to put the best lineups on the court to win the game. But at the end of the day, I don't know that it particularly matters, because if you have 2 guys that are effective, then the minutes will shake out. They'll both get to play. If Lubin can shoot the 3 at all, maybe he steals some minutes at the 4. Maybe Williams shifts down. Like, you've just set yourself up where, like I said, there's a million options, and the guys who are performing the best are going to get the chance to play a lot of minutes. Like, there's no one that's just like locked in outside of a Darrion Williams, maybe a Trey Holloman, everyone, and Arsenault to an extent, but everything else has some flexibility to it.
From Skip in the chat, what would you set Lubin's over-under on points and rebounds at? What would you set Lubin's over-under on points and rebounds at if you set Vegas lines? What do you think?
Oh, probably a tick above what he had at UNC, I would imagine. So, probably 9 points, 7 boards, somewhere around there. And I would bet the over on that. But I think if you're if you're making it a wager type scenario, then I can see worlds where it's less than that as well, depending on what NC State's roster looks like.
I think a lot of this comes down for me to Paul Embaya.
Mm-hmm.
If NC State is able to get Paul Embaya on campus, I'm not projecting 28, 29 minutes or maybe 30 minutes a night for Ven-Allen Lubin. So, that number is going to be lower. But if you don't get Embaya on campus, I mean, I think you could see Ven-Allen Lubin turn into a 28 to 30 minute a night player. And then that number is probably higher, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if he's playing 30 minutes a night, I mean, he might be around that 12, 13 point per game, 6, 7 rebound per game number.
Oh,
And
I 100%
so,
agree.
yeah, I think if you can find early lines on that and you want to take a gamble on what you think is going to happen with Mr. Embaya, you might be able to make you some good money here, Jake.
So I saw Danny just putting there, do I, Jake, have any eligibility left?
There you go.
Well, you might get about 3 trips up and down the court at this level of pace, but outside of that, I'll be pretty gassed pretty early, and I'm not all that much out of shape, but definitely could never compete at that level.
Yeah, you're used to the 3/4 court at this point, right?
Oh yeah, men's league, and I'm playing on the perimeter, baby. I'm not just trying to play down low.
Let me see if we got to take a couple more out of the chat here. Chad, if Val has his best year here, I can't wait to see the meltdown that will happen from the Blues. Yeah, honestly, we haven't talked a lot about that dynamic of this. I think this is the first player that's left directly from UNC to go to NC State?
Basketball?
I believe so.
I think so.
Basketball. Yeah. I don't know. For me, I've kind of with the changing schedules and all those different things, it doesn't really hit me as much. And I guess for him, he doesn't have to go to Chapel Hill this year, so it's not going to be a big impact in that regard. But I don't know, man. I'm so used to transfers now. It just feels like you're bringing in a transfer. It feels like 10 years ago, this will be a much bigger story. But when you're talking about a kid who started his career at Notre Dame, then he was at Vanderbilt, he took a year at North Carolina, now he's at NC State. Can you really blame the kid? It's not like this is your typical. He was at UNC 4 years, graduated. I'm going state free.
That's a little different. That would feel different, but I mean, it's what it is, And he's not going to have to go to UNC and play. I would love it for him to just have a really good season, just from an optics perspective, especially better than he did at Carolina. I think that would say a lot about the maybe direction of both programs if that ends up being the case. So I mean, from that perspective on the recruiting trail, I think it's helpful as well.
Few more questions in here, and then we will wrap this one up. From Ben Ormond, how many minutes do you all see Paul McNeil getting? I think it's, for me, Jake, a really interesting question because I have McNeil lumped into that kind of, jumbo of talent at the 2 position, maybe the 3 position when you look at Allen Breed, Terrence Arsenault, Paul McNeil, Matthew Abel. Maybe you throw Quadir Copeland in there. I mean, you've got a lot of guys competing for minutes at that spot. And so I think it's hard to project. I don't know. I would say, and again, I'm probably going to come in low. I would say 10 to 15. I, I'm not envisioning a big role for him because I'm expecting a big role for Allen Breed, a big role for Terrence Arsenault, and then you're going to get some minutes from Matthew Abel as well. Do you play Darrion Williams some at the 3? Do you play Quadir Copeland some at the 2 and the 3? You got so many options that I feel like somebody has to be those 8 and 9 guys in this roster.
Yeah, he'll get a crack. I mean, it's just, and that's
right.
That's the beauty of the whole thing, guys. Is from a minutes perspective, we've said it on a variety of different publications at this point, from our mouths at least. That, or I'll back it up. I'm not gonna put words in your mouth, James. But my opinion of it is you have Breed, Abel, and McNeil, and those dudes are just kind of competing with each other to see who's going to play the most. Likely it's going to be Breed that's going to get the lion's share of that off the rip because of the experience, because of the familiarity with the coaching staff. But from there, I mean, if a guy's, we've said it 4 times on this podcast now, if a guy's showing out, like, they're going to play, like, they're going to earn those minutes. And, maybe it's Abel, maybe it's McNeil. Certainly one of those 2 is going to be in the rotation from day one. You're going to need an extra guard to come in. Just depends on who's hot too. Maybe a guy goes through a stretch of 3 or 4 hot games, and that's something you might see early season of Abel's playing more in one game, McNeil in another, or hopefully they're all blowouts and we're getting guys run consistently. So it'll bear out, but I think 10 to 15 sounds about right from the get go, and we'd see what happens from there.
Yeah, and I want to add, that's why it's hard at this point in the process to really project minutes for guys, especially when you're talking about positions where there are a lot of options. Like, it's easy for us to say Darrion Williams is going to play 30 minutes a night. If Paul Embaya does not make it to campus, Ven-Allen Lubin is going to play 28 to 30 minutes a night because you know what else you have on the roster. But when you start talking about these positions where you have options and depth and nobody's really proven, because that's really the difference we're talking, right, Jake? I mean, you're talking about what Darrion Williams has proven, what Ven-Allen Lubin's proven, that they're going to get those minutes. But you look at even previous years, you go back to this past year, down the stretch, you saw Marcus Hill cede minutes down the stretch to Paul McNeil, right? You go back to last year. What do we think going into last season? We thought the 4 position going into last year, we would have told everybody, oh, you've got MJ Rice and Dennis Parker Jr. competing for that spot. And it ends up being 30 minutes a night of Mo Diarra. Right down the stretch, because he won the, obviously, MJ Rice redshirted, but Diarra won those minutes and earned it. And so we can say, 5 to 10 minutes for McNeil. It could be Matthew Abel. Like, Matthew Abel could come in and be good enough to just impact right away to where he's getting 20 to 25 minutes a night. So
I agree with that.
I think at that position, man, it's going to be really hard to project.
Well, we filled up our IPS bingo card for the night. We've mentioned Marcus Hill, Ernest Ross, Mo Diarra. I mean, MJ Rice. We've hit the hot button names, man. We got them all in there.
We've got them all. Couple more in the chat. I thought Embaya wasn't going to be here at all. We had to discuss this. Kevin Herndon, Jake. This is a free YouTube video take. So, we've talked on our platform, Inside Pack Sports, the last couple of weeks about the possibility that even though Paul Embaya has signed an agreement with NC State, that he may not end up at NC State. And we've been upfront about that. We think there's still a possibility that could happen. We don't think signing means anything. On Sunday, NC State released some stuff on social media where they had photos of players on campus for a team meeting. And you weren't expecting Embaya to be there. He was at the Euro camp overseas. But when you guys get to that point, okay, now we can start talking in finality, right? Like we can now start talking in finality with that. You saw Arsenault and Holloman and Darrion Williams and Jerry Dean, Quadir Copeland, Breed. All these guys were on campus. So they're here. They're going to be enrolled for a summer session. They're here.
Yeah.
So until that happens with Embaya, based on what we're hearing behind the scenes, we don't think this is a done deal.
Yep.
And that's why we're saying, Jake, that he could be, you know, that Lubin could have his massive role that a lot of people aren't really looking to project for him.
Absolutely. And just to throw this out there too, that's something we've discussed with the premium subscribers, who a lot of the people viewing this are, and that's something that'll stay on the premium side for the details. And we have some solid reasoning behind why that might be the case. So if you're interested, head over to the website and subscribe if you aren't already subscribed to the website.
Yeah, let's see what else we've got, and then we're going to get out of here. I think Wade was making a real effort to get a guy from UNC or Duke, and this was his best option all along. Val doesn't need the big role like the other options would. I mean, I know State messed around with Ian Jackson, but I don't know from Duke who they really messed around with. I don't think that was the case. I don't think
Isaiah
they went out.
There was talk about that.
Oh yeah, Isaiah Evans. Yeah, he didn't go in the portal, so I wouldn't think of him. Yeah. But honestly, what I think happened with Ven-Allen Lubin is we've talked the entire process about how analytical NC State staff is. And frankly, he's off the charts analytically. Right? Like, I mean, I told you, Jake, looking at just his Bart Torvik advanced metrics, I mean, he was top 10 in the league in pretty much any category you value for his position. And so when you factor that in, you're talking about a guy who is just going to appeal regardless of where he's at, right? I mean, he was 10th in the league in box score plus minus. He was 3rd in offensive rating. He was 7th in offensive rebound percentage. He was 10th in defensive rebound percentage. He was 9th in block rate. So if you're NC State and you're looking at a 5 position that's currently right now Paul Embaya, and then Jake, you can raise your hand if you want to, right? I mean, that's about where it's at, right? I mean, that's because you know Mikey's a freshman, 4 or 5, whatever. Ven-Allen Lubin's going to be really. I don't care if he's at, you know, St. Augustine's or Shaw, wherever. I mean, he's going to be appealing to you as a player. So him being at UNC, yeah, maybe that kind of is an extra feather in his cap in the sense that you'd want him. But no, I think it's the advanced metrics that have you thinking, yeah, we'd love to get this guy.
I agree 100%. Not much more to add there.
No, so let's get ready to wrap this up. As always, everyone, thank you all for joining us. Hit the subscribe button. We're trying to get this channel up from a subscription standpoint. So we're going to be posting some stuff here on the YouTube channel from time to time. Trust me, though, the majority of our content is going to continue to be premium, will be premium. We're going to have it on our premium channel. Even some of the YouTube stuff that we're going to post on YouTube, Jake, we can make it private and make it for premium members only and post it that way from the channel. So even if it's on YouTube, doesn't mean it's going to be free, but still subscribe so you'll get notifications when we post new content. We've taped this take on Ven-Allen Lubin. We've got a film room coming up. We just posted one on Allen Breed that's on the channel already. We have a film room coming out on Darrion Williams. We still need to get together and take one on Ven-Allen Lubin. So, yeah, we've got plenty of content coming your way on basketball as we work our way through the month of June. We'd like to thank you all for joining us and can't wait to do it again.